Hi, everybody, and welcome to this month's Salon. It's early. This month was on time, actually. Quite often it ends up being the second week, but it's on time this month, which is great because it means we're just still in this wave of the first wave of Uranus coming into Gemini. It did come into Gemini um, last year, briefly, of course. So this isn't the first time we've had it. But this is the second and kind of realer time. And I have to say that I've noticed it's quite, um, I'm surprised at how clearly some things have happened in my tiny little life here in Oxford that are very Uranus and Gemini. It's like this arrival of this exciting electrical energy into the sign of the twins. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. And I was wondering, I'm quite interested to see if this has happened to anybody else. But a couple of things happened, like just quite, which were about groups for me. So the first thing that happened was we went to the opening of this building in Oxford, and this building, it kind of sums up everything, a lot of things about the current zeitgeist. So it kind of sums up Uranus in Gemini and uh, Pluto and Aquarius and how those two are really interacting with each other. So this building it's called the um, Stuart Schwarzman Center for the Liberal Arts. Except they've added another liberal art, right? So they're normally 7 liberal arts. That's the traditional thing. But they've added this other one, which is AI, right? So they've inserted AI into this liberal arts building. It's this fancy new building, which is designed like it has a kind of cranium. It's like you're inside a brain in the middle of it with this huge foyer with a big glass oculus at the top, an eye looking up at the sky. It's opposite to the Oxford Observatory, which is an incredible building of, I think, I want to say it's 18th century observatory with the winds, with sculptures of the winds around it and sculptures and the zodiac as well. So it's opposite to this very amazing observatory where people used to look up at the sky. It hasn't been used. I don't think it's used as an observatory for ages. And they've built this new massive thing funded by the head of Blackstone, right? So what's happening in Oxford at the moment is that loads of tech billionaires are pouring money into the city. In fact, Larry Ellison is building a huge science park, and if you look at what he's actually funding, it's all about genetics and sort of basically all that stuff, genes and longevity. Make of that what you will. I know what I make of it. I think it's really sinister. Um, but so we went to this opening, and we were sort of trotting around along with everybody else. And to cut a long story short, it was a very weird ritual that took place. They said, we're going to have this opening, we're going to do this ritual. And they got this woman called Ez Devlin to do it, who I was very interested in because she's an amazing theater designer. She works for Lady Gaga and the Met, and it's fantastic. I thought, oh, it's going to be amazing lights and I don't know what. She always does stuff with eyes, right, with the oculus. A lot of her stuff has got opening and closing eyes, which, anyway, she did started to do this ritual. I was with my partner, David, he's not very kind of woo particularly, but he kind of is open, and started to get the creeps, actually, as this ritual was taking place, where she had everybody in a big circle. And then I realized, actually, this is the day of the ingress of Uranus into Gemini, right? So it's about, and it felt like she was creating this sort of, what the plan is for this place is to make this sort of giant network of ideas that are going to go across the world, and it's like taking control of that, right? That's what it's sort of an attempt to do. And I was talking to someone else, one of my a client actually in she's in The Hague, and she was saying that this AI ethics place in Oxford already has a very big reputation. So this woman, S. Devlin, was doing this thing. She was standing in the middle of this room on this platform, this lit platform. She was wearing yellow, the color of Mercury, and she's slightly kind of hunchbacked or something. And she had very big, like shoes on, like little hooves. So she was in this sort of Mercury outfit with these hooves on. And then she said, and I want everybody to drink this tea that I've made. To which my husband said, I'm not drinking her potion. It's a non-consensual, we're in a non-consensual kind of magical ritual that we didn't know that we were going to be in. And we're expected to drink this potion. So we left anyway. So that was my first very kind of Uranus and Gemini thing. And the reason I bring that up, A, because it was weird. It had a very weird atmosphere, okay? That there was something electrical happened with these people. And it was the usual kind of crowd that you get and something like that in Oxford, which is people of a certain age looking confused academics, basically, with fluffy hair and terrible clothes, looking sort of being herded into this space. But the reason I bring it up is because of all this AI stuff, which is the Pluto in Aquarius, but also this Uranus in Gemini, that it's like we're at the beginning of this massive networking thing that's going to be going on. And the second thing that happened to me quite quickly was that I had what's called a coordinated subscription attack on my website, which means that you suddenly get hundreds and hundreds of subscribers. And then if you send out anything, they say that they report you for spamming them. So suddenly it looks like you're spamming loads of people. So it worked out fine. MailChimp dealt with it. We talked about it. But I thought that was really interesting too, because that's like this idea, this coordinate, this network. And some of the people supposedly doing this were dead people, right? So it's a coordinated network of dead and aliveness. And I think there's more. There's obviously a thing. I'd never heard of a coordinated subscription attack. And for why? For why? I mean, it did seem that some of the people doing it were part of a big church in Houston. So I did wonder if that was why they saw my Lilith book and they thought it was like the devil. But that also is like this idea of this coordinated groups of people doing stuff with information, right? Using these networks for good or ill, whatever. But like I said, it's fine. It freaked me out a lot. It frightened me initially because I was thinking, oh my God, am I on some list that these people are thing? But I don't think it's that. And the third thing that happened, just as a Uranus and Gemini thing, is that my youngest daughter, who is a Gemini, came home. She arrived back home on our doorstep. I picked her up at the airport. And that seemed to me, that's perfectly Uranian and Gemini thing, to be at the airport with someone who is literally a Gemini. And I think that, well, there's some more stuff, but I'm hoping that some other people have also had some of these funny experiences. But that's like actual things that have happened. But I have to say, my sense also is that I can feel this shift enormously. It feels like, and it's because it's almost like the last thing. I mean, there are a few more things that will shift, but this is the last big one. And now we're into this new place. And all of the outer planets are now in sync again, but in the new world, in this fiery, airy place where they're working. Although Jupiter is not. Jupiter is still in water. So there's that. That is going to shift again. That's another piece of the puzzle that comes in July, by the way. So I'm going to go through some dates with you because I think it's quite useful to look at this whole summer. So we've had this like bud of stuff, this very tight thing in Aries, this grouping of planets, which is beginning to gradually spread out across, across the sky. And what we have is we have this kind of flowering out also of all of the outer planets working, coordinating together, which starts now, right? So it's at a peak in July where they're all at 4 degrees, but it's now that we can feel this beginning to happen, beginning to come in, things beginning to come together. And the energy of that Uranus in Gemini is very social. I think this is one of the things to think about with this, is that these are Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, and Gemini. So the ruler of Aquarius is going to be in Gemini, and that ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, is now coordinating with Pluto and Aquarius. So this is all very Aquarian. And what is Aquarius? It's groups of people. And what is Gemini? It's people communicating. It's two people communicating with each other. So I would suggest that you look at like groups that you're in. Some are going to be closing, finishing. Some are going to be weirding. And there seems to be a lot of I'm finding this energy very weird, even though I've got quite a lot of Gemini in my chart. So it's like, this is something I should be able to deal with. I'm mutable, but there's a sort of weirdness that's going on. And I'm sure that some of you probably having weird stuff going on social media as well. That's just crazy. The level of AI slop as well is so bad now. You can't even look the only thing I can look at is Wikipedia almost. So hard to look anything up anymore without getting this stuff that's not true, or the stuff that's generated by AI. I find it anyway. I'm on page 3 looking for an actual person or an actual expert. That's beside the point. But this Aquarian nature of things and this Gemini thing means that it's going to be affecting groups of people and your friendships and your relationships, right? And it also means that anybody, if you've got Libra stuff, these planets are making very good aspects to Libra, right? They're coordinating with that Libra stuff in some way. And Libra, if you can picture that you've got, Uranus and Gemini, Pluto and Aquarius, and in between those, you've got Neptune in Aries. So what's opposite to Aries is Libra. And so people with stuff in Libra, or Libra things, the things of Libra, which are law and justice, as well as relationships, are under a lot of pressure. It may not be bad pressure, or they may be steering things. So Libra, the Libra bit of this, which is the sort of quiet bit, is quite important to keep in mind. But it's also working very well with this airy energy. So as these outer planets are now in this incredible kind of flower shape or bowl shape or chalice or whatever you want to call it, and as they're working together, they are on one side of the sky pretty much, though, which is the side of the sky that is, I'm just going to get I could share the picture with you. Let's just look at now. But the side of the sky will be, once Jupiter comes into play, it's all the side of the sky that is on the sort of on one side of Leo Aquarius, so to speak. And Jupiter comes into play very soon, actually, in the end of June, beginning of July. And that is going to turn the whole thing up a notch. And for people personally, there's going to be this group thing, but also you need to look at all those planets and think about, there's going to be multiple ways that this works. It's not just one area of your life. It's going to be a whole half of it, maybe, or a whole chunk of it is actually changing. And the thing about that Uranus, and I was thinking about my Gemini child coming home, right? You wouldn't think that was a very Uranian thing to do, because actually it's about liberation, because I think that what will eventually happen is that this is really about her leaving home. right? So this is because she's 20. And so she's going to got another year and then she's going to go. And my other daughter is very far away. She's in Australia. And of course, I have Uranus is going across my MC pretty much. But so I just wanted to share some dates with you and a picture of. Sorry, I've done it all on a bunch of post-it notes, which is probably not a very clever way to. Okay, because there are various points at which this thing really gets even more energy into it. And really, when Mars goes into Gemini on the 28th of June to the 11th of August, it sets fire to everything in here, right? So it's setting fire to that Uranus. Right now, so Mars is kind of trickling along. It's in Aries and still setting fires to stuff in Aries, and then it goes into Taurus, and then it goes into Gemini. And when it's in Gemini, I think things are really going to take off again. From the 7th of July, so that's from the 28th of June to the 11th of August that Mars is going to be in Gemini. At the same time, from the 7th of July to the 31st of July, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune will all be at 4 degrees. Right, so they're going to be very tightly coordinating to do something, right? And we've had stuff like this before. So, I'm thinking of the 1960s when there was Uranus, Pluto were in conjunction and they were sextile to Neptune for part of that time. So it's not like it's not like the outer planets never coordinate like that. They do, but this one is got this. It's sort of wide, and it's in these very early degrees. So on the 7th of July, Neptune goes retrograde, right? And so it's when a planet goes retrograde, it doesn't like fall out of use or get weaker. It gets more intense when it goes retrograde. So as these planets are coming into this configuration, Neptune goes into a very intense phase. And Neptune is the central one of these three, right? This Neptune in Aries. And I think, I don't know if you guys have noticed that there have been massive rains in the Middle East. So all these places that were desert are suddenly like the Arab marshes are suddenly wet again, which I find quite interesting with that Neptune in Aries. Okay. And then on the 19th of July, Jupiter comes to 4 degrees of Leo and clicks into this thing, right? So we're going to have this massive configuration of all of these planets working together. And Saturn is not like out of the loop. It's a bit further along in Aries, but it's still within orb of all this. So that's quite an amazing lineup of these planets in fire and air. Okay, so what else have we got? Not that. Chiron goes into Taurus on the 19th of June, which is also important because Chiron just spends a little bit of time in Taurus and then goes back into Aries. But it's essentially, it is trying to move out of Aries. It's moving out of the fray and into Taurus. It's got other things to do. Okay, and then there's another thing that I want to just mark for this month, which is that the nodes are in Neptune, are in Pisces and Virgo, and they are just coming out of them, out of Pisces and Virgo, and they'll be shifting in July. But right now, at the end of May, they're around 4 degrees of Pisces and Virgo, and the sun will be at 4 degrees of Gemini on the bendings of that thing. So having said all that, so you can see that there's all this stuff happening, all of this coordination and harmony. Now, if you look at the world does not feel harmonious at all, actually, and that's just a fact. We can't sort of pretend, secretly it's actually harmonious, we're just not noticing. But so what does that mean when the skies are very harmonious and the planets are coordinating, but people are fighting and doing bad things, right? The dawning of the age of Aquarius wasn't supposed to be like this, right? It was supposed to be lovely. Although I think you can argue about when the age of Aquarius actually dawns, but this is a very big point. And the last time I remember, we've had a big um, outer planet thing like this before recently, which was COVID, right? That we had COVID when all those planets were in Capricorn. And it was clear there was something big was going to shift at that point. This is also clear that something big is shifting, and it's going to have a wider effect, and that some of it's going to be good and some of it's going to be not good, right? So when we're thinking about what signs and planets are involved, obviously we can get quite anxious. I can get quite anxious personally about Aries sometimes. I love my Aries friends, but Aries, the sign, it's fiery. It's not rational. So thank God we have the two most rational signs of them all, pretty much. Two of the most rational, which are Gemini and Aquarius. Very rational signs, think things through, which may be restraining that fiery Aries stuff, or they may be directing it in not such a good way, because who are our plutocrats in Aquarius are these tech bros everything's coming out of the closet, right? So they've revealed themselves with their stupid manifesto, which is, to sum up, it's like, yeah, the rest of you are really stupid, and we're really smart, and we're going to stomp all over you. That's their manifesto, in my words. But that is also Pluto and Aquarius, because of course Aquarius and Gemini are signs. There's air signs. There are also signs that are quite kind of intelligent, so to speak, where intelligence can get detached from heart, right? And that is one of the big dangers that I think is happening here. And what I think is really interesting is when Jupiter goes into Leo, which is the sign of heart, right? Real heart is a Leo thing. What's going to happen when Jupiter confronts Pluto from there? And also, don't forget that in August, the sun goes into Leo, right? So we have Jupiter and the sun, these two planets that are in the sign of the heart, the sign of courage and generosity. And they will be opposite to that Pluto, and also coordinating, though, again, with these other things. So they'll be opposite to Pluto, but they'll be in a beautiful trine aspect to Neptune. And they will be in a beautiful aspect to Uranus as well. They'll be in a lovely sextile. So everything is, even when there's an opposition, there are all these other aspects that are making it easier. So it means for all of us, I think, that we can find a sort of, if you shift your perspective, you can find another solution, a way of doing things. And I think that this is all about our shifting perspectives and understanding what's really kind of the networks. And this is the other thing that I think that people are much clearer about after the publication of the Epstein files. And now we know there are these dark networks, right? Literally, Pluto and Aquarius, this is dark networks, have been revealed. We knew stuff was going on when Pluto was in Capricorn in the corridors of power, right? But now it's been outed that there are these dark networks, and it's to be aware of them. It seems to me that this is the thing that we've been given, actually, partly with this. It's like a layer of skin has been taken off, and we're seeing the nerves or the veins very clearly. We're in a, what's the word, a dissection room, and we have that top layer taken off. And we're seeing how all these things connect. And these are signs of connection, right? Particularly Aquarius and Gemini are signs of connection, but social connection. And the planets are actually literally connecting as well. So it's all about connection. So the summer will also be about the people that you know, right? Your social connections. And it's interesting, but yeah, I note that, Aries is not a sign of connection necessarily. It can go very much off on its own and be very independent. But it's being pulled into connection by these other two signs, the planets in the other signs. I keep on doing this because it's like this little sort of triangle. I think I will share something with you. Let's just share. I think right. Yeah, that's tonight's chart. But what I really want to share is if we go to the sort of 19th of July, and you'll see the shape that is going to dominate the summer. So it's this shape. Do you see that? And the reason I've chosen the 19th of July is because you can see there's Pluto at 4, Jupiter at 4. Jupiter gets to 4 around then. Uranus at 4, and Neptune at 4. So we've got this beautiful chalice shape here, or bucket, or whatever and actually and what's also interesting about this day, the 19th of July, is that Jupiter's got to 4, but actually the moon is also at 4 degrees of Libra. It isn't in this thing, but it was a few hours ago. So the moon comes into that. And one of the things to think about also with this summer is whenever the moon's in Libra, the moon comes into is directly opposite this stuff. And finally, I just want to point out that there's several kind of there are these grand trines really going. A grand trine is formed every time the moon goes through Libra, and then when the sun goes through Libra, when the other planets start to go through Libra in the autumn, then you'll start to get these trines forming. What else do I want to say? Social. Okay. Last time that we met, I think I talked quite a bit about, Uranus and Gemini previously in World War II to the sort of other side of World War II. And I think that it's important to, as we're going through this shift, there's this, I think we mentioned this last time too, that there's this talk about like collapse, and also I was very interested in Gary Stevenson was saying, who's an English economist who has a podcast. He was talking about how, again, how people on his end are talking about Luddites, that we all have to do AI, because if we don't, then, because look, the Industrial Revolution worked out fine in the end. But what they neglect to say is that, yeah, it didn't actually work out fine for 150 years. So this time we need to skip that bit where everybody's crushed by these changes in technology. And actually, we have the choice now to consider things much more carefully instead of just going straight into just saying, okay, well, we're all going to do AI and you guys are going to lose your jobs. So what? Don't be Luddite about it. In fact, we could do this in a much more considered way. So I think I'm going to just open up and see if anybody has any questions first, or any comments. Like what happened to you on what's happened to you, which is sort of Uranus and Gemini-ish. Does anybody have any thoughts? Yeah, well, I'm interested that Pluto and Juno are making conjunction for most of this time. Okay, they are working together. So why is Juno important? Juno is often written about by the patriarchal astrology world as a sort of planet of like jealousy and whatever. And actually, I have to say, I really find that she's incredibly important for powerful people, right? If you look at almost any chart of a person who's really powerful, like Xi Jinping, his Juno is really powerful. There'll be a Juno-Jupiter conjunction. It's really common with like world leaders, basically. So that tells you something about how important Juno is behind the scenes. And Juno seems to me to be about, well, a lot of things, obviously, but it's very female, right? So when someone has a big Juno transit, like a younger woman has a big Juno transit, she often comes into her womanhood in a big way. So, for example, if you see Juno going across the midheaven, that I my one of my favorite examples is like when Miley Cyrus did that awful, when she kind of stopped being cute little girl, she had a Juno transit across the middle heaven. When Billie Eilish stopped being cute, she had a transit across the midheaven of Juno. So, what's this about? It's about taking the power of being a woman, right? Whether you like it or not, we can discuss that. But it's taking the power of being a woman, and I think this Juno is deeply involved with this thing that I'm talking about, this chalice, right? I'll get it back up in a sec right now, actually, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And I do associate Juno with strong adult women, right? That's what Juno is. And you see, look, and she's there. This is in the 19th of July, but she's there all summer. Basically, these two are working together. And what's that power? And Pluto can kind of annihilate, obviously, sometimes when it's can make in conjunction, but I think it also can actually really empower. And it may be, and again, this is to do with women's networks. Juno's going to be in Aquarius a really long time because of the retrograde. I haven't got the exact dates that Juno's in Aquarius, but that is probably about exactly what you want to hear, really, Michelle, which is this is about women's networks, right? And it's about being a big, strong adult woman. And also, so the kind of more, what I think of as the more patriarchal astrology is like, oh, it's about jealousy and marriage and relationships. Okay, it can be an asteroid of marriage, but I see it so often like in the charts of people who are happily single on the ascendant, for example. You're married to yourself or you're sovereign to yourself. So I do think there's something in here about women's networks. And the other planet, asteroid that's really important this summer in all of this is Pallas, which is in Aries right now. And actually Ceres is really important too. It's in Gemini. Ceres is in Gemini right now. And so it's been, it's involved in bringing Uranus into the fold, so to speak, into this new thing. So all the asteroids are the major asteroids. So I'm talking about the main four: Vesta, Juno, Ceres, and Pallas. They're all involved in this. If you can see that they're all on that side of the sky and will be contributing. So they take about 4 months to assign, but some of them are going retrograde, like Juno. So she's spending a lot longer. So you can see this is the chart for now, and you can see that Pluto and Juno are conjunct now, right? And then they both turn backwards, and they stay in a conjunction pretty much over the summer. So I think women are really important in this, and either the empowering, and we all know that we're in a fight, right? Or a struggle, a lutte in the struggle between the manosphere, or whatever you want to call it, between this huge rise in misogyny and maintaining our rights, at least, and and that struggle underlies everything in some ways. I mean, there's two things, in my opinion, that underlie everything: the climate, the planet, the depredation, the way the planet's being treated, and misogyny, or however you want to classify that, the treatment of women and children, right? And the treatment of the planet. At the moment, we're seeing how terrible that is, but at least we're seeing it. The other thing I want to point out, speaking of Pluto and Juno, is that we have a new Archbishop of Canterbury who's a woman for the first time ever, which is incredible, actually. But this is the Anglican Church is massive. And we have this, lady who is the new archbishop, who also was the first archbishop for I can't remember how long, 300 years or something, to do a pilgrimage from London to Canterbury to get crowned. So that's also a massive change. It's really interesting, going to be really it kind of went under the radar somehow. It's interesting that it wasn't kind of like people were not shouting about it.